Likely the burning question that you have is, what's browser support like for Flexbox? And that's what this exercise is all about. You know, it used to be that working with Flexbox was pretty tricky. This was before the wide adoption by browsers to finally support Flexbox. Prior to this, we had to incorporate all three of the Flexbox specifications that I mentioned earlier into your Flexbox code. This meant that rather than specifying, for instance, a single Flexbox related property, specifying it just once, we actually needed to specify it up to 3 times, depending on what browsers we wanted to support. On top of that, we further had to provide non-Flexbox fallbacks for non-supporting browsers. Lots and lots of fun, as I'm sure you can well imagine. Well, since 2012, which is a while ago now, browser support has actually been fantastic and growing steadily since. Other than some minor considerations that you may want to make for Internet Explorer 10, we're good to go with Flexbox, which is great news. As of mid-2016, the time of this recording, Flexbox is supported in all major browsers, including mobile and desktop browsers, even Internet Explorer, which is great news for you and I. However, interestingly, if you step back just a few versions in 1 or 2 of our major browsers, and you'll find there's a lot less support. Where can we find information about browser support? Well, I want to show you a website here. Do you know about caniuse.com? Go ahead and head over to caniuse.com if you would. And what I'd like you to do is in this most searched features section here, click on Flexbox, or in the search field up towards the top, you can type in Flexbox. Either way, it'll bring you to this screen here. Now, if you want a quick description of Flexbox, which is always handy for us to help us along the way, we get a short description up towards the top if you're interested. A method of positioning elements in horizontal or vertical stacks. We've already talked about this a little bit. Support includes the support of all of the major properties prefixed with Flex, as well as etc., etc. So you can continue reading through that if you want. Most importantly, right across the board here, we have support from all of our major browsers. Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and so on. There's our mobile browsers down towards the right there. Okay? So if you want, you can hover over top of some of these here. Safari and Chrome for iOS, supported. Opera, supported. Safari, supported. And on and on and on. Now, interestingly, if I head over to Internet Explorer version 11, it says partial support when I hover over top here. Okay? Notice here in this little hover box, it says notes. This is down towards the bottom. Partial support is due to large amount of bugs present. See known issues. This is right down kind of in that. I can't move my mouse because it's going to disappear. But down in the bottom portion of this little pop-up window here. So it says see known issues. So if I go and click on known issues, you can see here, Internet Explorer 11 requires a unit to be added to the third argument, the flex basis property, etc. There's another one down here in IE 10 and 11, containers with this code, this Flexbox property, and this Flexbox property will not properly calculate their flexed children's sizes if the container has min height but no explicit height. So there's little fiddly bugs and things like this in Internet Explorer 11. But interestingly, and I kind of buzzed over top of this, when I'm hovering my mouse over top of these different browsers here, you can see the global usage there as a percentage. So Chrome version 52 has 17.29% global usage. Internet Explorer 11 has 4.29% global usage. So you'll have to sort of decide for yourself which browsers you really want to focus on and pay attention to. But as you can see here, we've got great support in our modern browsers. Now, interestingly, if you want sort of a historical look at Flexbox support, we can click on Show All up towards the top here. And now we get something like this. And as you can see, and I mentioned this just a moment ago, stepping back just 1 or 2 versions In, for instance, Opera Mobile, stepping back just 2 versions, we have no support at all for Flexbox. Or stepping back to Internet Explorer version 9 with its whopping global usage of 0.37%, it's not supported at all either. Okay? Now I want to show you something else here. If I hover over top of Internet Explorer 10, it says here partial support with prefix MS. I mentioned prefixing earlier on. So if you need your Flexbox-based layouts to work in Internet Explorer 10, you'll have to prefix all of your Flexbox-related CSS properties with what's referred to as that tweener prefix, which we mentioned earlier on. Now, what about older versions of browsers that don't support Flexbox at all? Say older versions of Internet Explorer. Well, this is actually really cool, and if you have your notepads ready, get ready to jot some notes here. This is really interesting. We actually don't need to do anything at all. See, what's going to happen is if a browser doesn't recognize or understand Flexbox, then it'll ignore it completely, which is actually great for us because it means that our Flexbox layout will fall back or revert back to default HTML behavior, which is to display our layout containers as block level elements. If you stop and think about this for a second, it makes perfect sense. You might want to rewind 10 seconds and listen to that over again. It's all going to fall back to the default block level elements. This means browsers that don't support Flexbox will render a vertically stacked layout very similar to what we would see in a mobile layout. So if you don't mind older non-Flexbox browsers getting this alternative layout, then great. You just saved yourself a ton of time and headache. All of the layout elements will appear and they will function. Their layout simply won't be the same as it would otherwise be in a modern browser. This is called graceful degradation, by the way, and it's definitely the easiest approach with the least amount of hassle. Now, interestingly, during my research for this portion of the course, I came across a comment someone left on a forum. I'm not sure where it was. It might have been Quora. I'm not really sure where. Anyway, it summarized the direction of modern web design so well that I wanted to include it here for you. The commenter said, just stop supporting Internet Explorer 8. And I would argue, just stop supporting all older browsers. And I would say it's time for 9 to go too. Start using Flexbox, people. If they don't like it, meaning the users of older browsers, and if they don't like this gracefully degraded layout in their older browser, then they can download Chrome. It's free. We need to stop pandering to bad browsers. This pretty much summarizes where we are in modern web design. As designers, we can build modern, wonderful, functional UIs and layouts that will degrade gracefully to older, outdated browsers. And if users of those older browsers don't like it, they can install a much more modern browser. Okay? So there you go. I hope this gives you a really good idea of where we are with browser support as far as Flexbox is concerned. Now, just a quick mention, if you don't like this idea of graceful degradation, you could use a float-based fallback via Modernizer, which is available over at modernizer.com. But actually walking through the process of putting something like this together is certainly beyond the scope of this course. I just want to make you aware that this is another option for you, okay? So throughout this course, we'll only be using Flexbox syntax from the latest final draft. Again, if you need to support older browsers, you can allow graceful degradation to take care of it on its own, or you can take a look at Modernizer, or you can take a look at the Internet Explorer 10 tweener syntax.